Um, like I said earlier, we have a myriad of problems with us. INEC wants to achieve something remarkable, but how it has gone about it is what is contentious. So there are two words based on INEC's bulletin. There are two words INEC emphasizes. It emphasizes what it calls proportionality, and it also emphasizes equality. So what it wants to do is create 30,027 additional polling units, but it has a headache of how do we allocate it. If we allocate it strictly based on voters' database, we're going to be forced to take away from some states and give to some states. So what it says is, on one hand, these 30,027 additional polling units, let us allocate them based on some measure of equality and some measure of proportionality. By equality, what INEC says is 15% of 30,027 should be spread across all states. So once you work out the numbers, that comes to about INEC saying it has about 4,504 polling units it wants to spread across the 36 states plus the FCT. What it then does is equally gives each state 121 polling units, and then it gives Abuja 146 polling units. Based on that,
only Abuja.
Only Abuja. So every other state has 121 polling units. Abuja has 146. So on one measure, though INEC is preaching equality, on its own exercise of equality, it hasn't been equal to all environments or all locations. So what you then do is, after it's distributed 121 to each state and it's giving Abuja 146, if you round that up, that comes to 4,504 polling units. It then says, okay, but we still have another problem, and that is, after we've done it equally, how do we allocate the remaining 26,000 based on proportionality? By proportionality, what INEC is saying is that let's look at the voters' database. Even though they've allocated it on terms of equality, let's now try and allocate it based on the existing voters' database. The challenge with it is who defines what is equal and who defines what is proportional. So on its own, INEC has said we feel proportionality means 85%. But the question most observers are asking is, what is the basis of saying 85% based on proportionality, 15% based on equality? Why not 70-30? Why not 60-40? Why not 55-45? Now, because those measures are subjective, it makes us ask a lot of questions. Why did we only allocate 15% based on equality? And I give you an example. It's a typical case of if you have, and allow me to use this analogy, if you have 5 kids and you have 5 oranges to give them, based on equality, you'll give each child an orange. But based on proportionality, you'll give each child based on what each child needs, because there will be differences in terms of what each child's age is, what do they need in terms of nutrients, their consuming capacity as well will matter. So if you want to do it based on proportionality, you can't give each child one. You're going to have to consider so many other factors.
Now, looking at this now, using that instance of 5 oranges and 5 children, you say that what INEC seems to be doing is saying, you know what, we have 5 oranges. We'll reserve 1, which we will share equally amongst all the 5 children, and then the remaining 4 we will share based on their needs. Is that what INEC is doing?
Exactly. Now, the question is, why not share 2 oranges equally among the 5, and then share the remaining 3 based on needs? But we will keep having this discussion because the sharing will always be subjective. However, the challenge is INEC is trying to satisfy everybody. And in trying to satisfy everybody, you will satisfy nobody, because on one measure, you want to share the polling units based on proportionality, which is looking at the database. On another measure, you want to share it based on equality, which is how many units do we have? So we have 30,027 units that we want to share, but we don't want to share everything based on proportionality. We want to share some based on equality. The challenge is who determines what is equal.
Okay. What about what they say here? Because you say who determines what is equal. But if you look at the percentage of registered voters to the population figure, that of FCT is 63.48. And so, doesn't that warrant the 15% equality wherein they get 146?
And on equality, based on the definition of equality, when something is equal, it means everybody has the same amount. Even the Oxford Dictionary calls equal the same amount. So if INEC says we want to do something based on equality, and we are saying 15% of our new allocations will be based on equality, what INEC then needs to do is to find a way to ensure that everybody has equal number of polling units. And then you then start trying to solve how you do it based on proportionality. But the challenge with proportionality, like we've said already, is that looking at the existing polling units, INEC feels that, like I said, like Anambra has 2.5% of, about 2.5% as well of existing voters. But it feels that based on that, Anambra should not have more than 3,000 plus, definitely not up to 4,000 polling units. But it then comes out to scream that, as of today, we have more than that in Anambra. But attempting to reduce polling units, like I said earlier, is similar to electoral suicide. However, what is interesting is if we look at how INEC has distributed these polling units on a party basis.
Okay, sorry, but before you get to the party basis, let me just get this off when we talk about staying with that 15% equality. Now, doesn't it statistically matter, even though they say they're predicating it on some of these figures? Yes, all the other states have got this 121 going with that 15% equality, except that of FCT. So your point is, these calculations notwithstanding, if you have to distribute them based on that 15% equality, it has to be the same across board.
Exactly. But I'll tell you in 1 minute the major headache INEC has. 15% of the new polling units, the exact number is 30,027. 15% of those new polling units comes to 4,504. The challenge is if you do 4,504.
Okay, even though they say 2. No,
exactly. If you do 4,504 divided by 37, what you will get will be 121.74. Now, there is no such thing as 0.74 of a polling unit. So what the INEC then does is, rather than round up, it rounds down. So it gives all states 121, and then it gives Abuja 146. But again, INEC had used the word equality. So we need to ask ourselves, but why isn't everything equal? What you will expect is everything should be equal. And then the balancing amount of about 26,000 now goes based on proportionality. But again, even if INEC does that, the question still remains, why 15% based on equality? Why not 17? Why not 20? Why not 45? Was a survey carried out that voters felt that polling units should be distributed more in favor of proportionality than equality? So those are the questions we need to ask ourselves. Not just, INEC isn't the only institution that has to answer that question. As observers, we all need to understand what we want when it comes to how these polling units should be distributed. Are we clamoring for polling unit distribution based on proportionality all the way, or equality all the way? And if we're going for a mix, what mix is ideal? The challenge is if we're going for a mix, we're going to have to be subjective. 80-20, 65-35, what basis and on what reasons and logic are we going to use a mix? Okay. What INEC has tried to do is to try and do a mix to satisfy all parties. But in trying to satisfy all parties, it has dissatisfied all parties.